So teaching students how to integrate a source is a mechanical thing. It's a rhetorical thing. What's been really nice with Rules for Writers and having Nancy Summers aboard is Nancy's research is on two main areas: how students write, what their composing processes are, and the role of response and feedback. So when I was in graduate school getting my Comp Ret degree, one of the people I read most often in my writing and teaching and writing courses was Nancy Summers. And when I met her, I found out that, you know, she still at heart is the same community college teacher she was when she was in Oklahoma. And even though she did all this research and writing at Harvard, her concerns and issues are the same. So she's very concerned with the rhetorical uses of sources and how students understand the role that a source plays in the paper. But you don't understand that role if you don't have a purpose in the paper. If you don't have an audience and a purpose in what you think and who you want to talk to, it's hard to integrate sources beyond the mechanics. When you ever work in a writing center and see a student come in with a handbook and they're frustrated because the handbook, and they're trying to find the one true source. Do you ever see that in the library? You know the one true source? No. Student has a paper, they have a thesis, right? So now they need an authority to make their point. And remember the old days of InfoTrack and the daisy wheel printers? You go into the library and you'd hear this bzzz, 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 and you see like the ream of paper going. And any source that they could find in InfoTrack, the search databases that mention in the subject, the abstract, the keyword, or the title, anything to do with their topic, they were laying in. And they would print. I remember doing this myself, right? 200 possible sources. So now you're like Indiana Jones or you're like Frodo. So you got to find the one truth, right? So you got to find it, right? So you're going through and you're looking for the one source that says what you want to say, because you don't feel that you have the right to say it. So if you think gun control is wrong, you want an expert who agrees with you. If you think abortion is wrong, you want an expert who agrees with you. If you think drugs should be legalized, you're out there smoking it and you want an expert who agrees with you. But you're looking for the one true source rather than having your own opinion and your own point of view written first and then finding evidence that makes your point and dealing with counter evidence that disagrees but that you need to account for. When you do that exercise where students discuss things online, it gives them counterpoints of view. A great exercise is to have students quote from an online discussion. You've discussed this exists here. Go in and I want you to write an essay in response to this discussion and quote from a classmate who agrees with you and somebody who doesn't and work them into the paper. And your audience is X. And always give them an audience or ask them to choose an audience. Identify an audience and a purpose, then the reason for writing comes into focus. For us, it's natural. When we get to the point where we're writing for an academic journal, we've been reading the journal for a while. We've been having conversations with our fellow graduate students, our colleagues in hallways. We're going to a conference. We know who the audience is because it is us. We know the genres and the conventions. We know that cool research trick that students don't know that I wish I knew as a freshman. That would have been so impressive. You know, the thing where you say, I want you to use 15 sources and write a 30-page paper. If I'd only known that I could use 14 of them in one shot. As research has shown, Colin, Smith and Walensky, 1972, Harbour, you know, and you list a whole bunch of names in parentheses. Word processing is a new trend that is overtaking America. And I've got 14 sources done in the first sentence. Then I'll do another 7 in another sentence, and I've done my literature review leading up to my thesis statement. However, research has not proved that it's important to use a pencil with an eraser when you're doing hard copy. I set out to prove this by interviewing several students who use pencils with erasers, and then the rest of the paper is all about my research and me. Students don't know that. They don't know those conventions or that there's different reasons for citing sources. But if they start with a voice and they have reasons to bring things in for purposes and reasons to use evidence, it changes how you teach the writing process. And it makes it a lot more fun. The beauty of all this is that companies that make millions of dollars, literally, oops, wrong way. I'm gonna, we have this nice fancy site on our website, and I keep using this little crummy handmade site I made once. So here on this link on plagiarism, this is Doris Kearns Goodwin. This is kind of hard to read in this column thing. So I'm just going to scroll down here. She talks about the mistakes she made in the Fitzgeralds and the Kennedy. And this was before computers. She literally had stacks and stacks of books in boxes, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of notes. So she said, what I know now is I can use a computer for organizing and taking notes. I rely on it for sorting things, and she discovered the footnote key that you can insert a note. She keeps copies of her sources online, and it changed how she does research. Then we scroll down a little bit on this page. Still, there is no guarantee against error, by the way. And then here, Paul Wedlake, at the time this page went up several years ago, was the director of sales for iParadigms, the company that made Turnitin.com. And there was a recent court case, in fact, of a high school student who had sued Turnitin because he was required to put his papers in Turnitin, and he felt that that was a copyright violation because Turnitin would keep his paper and put it in their database, and he didn't want that. So he sued them. He lost because the judge said it was fair use, it was transformative. But at the time, teachers weren't sure, so Turnitin had this statement on copyright that you see the end of on the screen. This is their last paragraph. And finally, offering students an offline alternative to using Turnitin or plagiarism detection makes their consent clear. And here's the alternative they recommend. The student should be required to turn in a photograph or a photocopy of the first page of all reference sources used, an annotated bibliography, a paper reflecting on their research methodology, maybe drafts, kind of the things you teach students to do as researchers anyway, that they should be doing. So if you're teaching students to do what they should be doing, you do it, and this doesn't matter what course you're teaching. You can require these things again without necessarily having to grade every bit of it. If you do this, if you teach students to be good researchers, most students wouldn't want to do that because it's too much work. They'd rather just go to the library, churn out a paper overnight and hand it in. But if you teach them to be careful, considerate researchers who take the process seriously and track what they're doing, the chances of plagiarism would also be vanishingly thin.